Hi, welcome to Community Dialogues. And my name is Faith Reeves. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator here in Fairfield. And I'm here to open up a new series, a little more resilience-oriented, a little more sustainability-oriented, a part of these Community Dialogues. Our first guest today is Marg Dwyer.
Hi, Faith.
Hi, Marg. Marg is a team member. She's a member of our Resilient Action Initiative management team. She is one of the co-founders of that initiative, very much a part of our Resilient Action community who is working together to develop a community plan. And Marg is also the co-chair of the Sierra Club, Southeast Iowa chapter. Marg, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to sit with you in front of a camera. I sit with her often, but it's a pleasure to sit with you in front of a camera and get to know you a little better.
Okay.
So you're from Syracuse, New York.
I am.
All right. Tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in Syracuse.
Well, as you know, I'm old, so I grew up in the 50s. And in the 50s, parents would send their kids outside to play all day and say, don't come back till lunchtime, don't come back till dinner time. Parents don't do that anymore. And so I was out. I was in meadows and building forts and picking flowers and making dandelion rings and building tree forts and building, lean-tos in the woods and dams in the swamp and waterfalls and all that kind of stuff. I was outdoors a lot.
As it should be.
As a kid, yeah. My mother was ahead of the curve. At her time, her rule was you can watch a half an hour of television a day. End of story, half an hour. I thought that was really brutal, but that's how it went. And later I was really grateful for that because it meant that I developed a lot of other interests and skills.
Wonderful. When you were growing up in Syracuse, were you already oriented towards, environmental protection? Was that something that you
I don't
felt?
think not consciously. Where I grew up, right up at the end of my street, up the hill, was the State University of New York forest. It was part of Syracuse University. And the forest was right up there. So I knew that there was environmental research going on there, and I knew that there was conservation going on there. And I think my parents subscribed to a conservationist magazine, maybe. I just didn't think of it as a thing when I was growing up. It wasn't until later, when I was older and in the 60s and environmentalism began to be an issue, that I started to think about that and started to think about, and when rivers started catching fire in the 60s and the Clean Water Act and all those kinds of things started to happen, that I started to be aware that there was a whole area that I hadn't thought about at all, but that somebody needed to be thinking about.
Yeah.
So for me, I didn't really get into it until life. I was interested, and I think I mentioned to you privately that I had a summer placement at a program that was in Kentucky, where they were trying to develop sustainable crops that would help the people in Appalachia be more self-sufficient and help restore the soil. The soil was pretty much trashed by corn and tobacco, corn and tobacco, corn and tobacco.
Yeah.
And so that was my first real experience with farming. I didn't know anything about farming, but I harvested cucumbers and I hoed strawberries and I planted Christmas trees and I did a lot of all that kind of stuff. And the person who was running that organization was, I believe, from Cornell University. He was an agronomist or somebody in agriculture from Cornell University. And while we were working, he taught us all kinds of things about soil and crops and all that kind of stuff. And I just drank it up.
Yeah.
But then life interfered, and I ended up going to college and having jobs and having children and getting married, and all that stuff had to be on the back burner for a while. And public service is something that's important to me, and I was on the school board for about 10 years, and that was important to me. And later, I ran for county supervisor, didn't make it, but I thought, that's okay. I still want to do public service. And once I retired from my work, I found Sierra Club seemed to be my niche. I didn't want to be political exactly, but I wanted it to be something of value to the community.
Wonderful.
And this seemed like a place where I could do public service without having to be a public servant. And so that's where I've landed.
Wow.
It's been fun.
Aren't we really grateful to have Marg in this role? What brought you to Fairfield?
What brought me to Fairfield? The gentleman that I was married to at the time came out here to be the Dean of Admissions at MIU. And so we moved out here, lived on campus for 6 years, I think it was, 6 or 7 years. We moved off campus, ended up, that marriage didn't last, but here I was in Fairfield, and I thought, well, okay, let's stay in Fairfield. So I lived in Fairfield and raised my kids and sent my kids to the public school, and that I figured I'd stay. I liked Fairfield. I had no reason to leave Fairfield.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go back to upstate New York, so I was happy to stay.
Wow. And so, you put your energies into the Sierra Club, and you've got some tracks that I sense that you have deep passion around. Of course, environmental protection, but zero waste, waste management.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I've been assigned some passion for zero waste, I would say.
Okay.
When I got involved with the Sierra Club, I realized that there was a lot of work that we could do. And as you probably know, during COVID, we put together a strategic plan that identified some areas where we felt we could make a difference and that would be universally beneficial. So, but before that, we were thinking how, we need to get in touch with people, we need to get in front of people, we need to bring people on board for this whole thing. And at one point, the library reached out to me, our previous library director, and said, people seem to be really interested in this recycling issue. We've invited somebody from Waste Management to come and talk on our How-To Tuesdays. They used to have these, a speed dating thing. And the How-To Tuesdays was supposed to have the Waste Management person there. And a couple times, he was assigned to be there but couldn't make it. So she said, but people were piling up at the desk for the Waste Management person and saying, where's the Waste Management guy? We want to learn about recycling. So she reached out and asked me if Sierra Club would like to host an hour-long program in the community room about recycling. And I said, yeah, I think we would. So I went back to the club and said, we should do this thing. And everybody said, well, yeah, but, who's going to do it? It's going to be a lot of work and this and that and the other thing. And I said, this is what we've wanted to do. We have to say yes to this. And they said, okay, but you have to do it. So I inherited Waste Management. And,
Thank you.
And I did some research for that presentation. I learned a lot of stuff, and then I kind of did get passionate about it.
Yeah.
So now I'm into it.
You're very into it. And, the work that you're doing with the Resilient Action Committee, you're also the lead for the waste management team there.
Yeah.
And so you're digging in on many levels.
Yeah, learning a lot.
You're learning so much.
Yeah.
What are some of these vital connections between waste management, zero waste, and the reality of having a sustainable or resilient community? What do you think are some of the really vital things?
Well, I think everybody recognizes that we have a trash crisis in our country, in our world, I guess, really. And the problem is not consumers. I mean, we can't pin it on consumers to do a better job of recycling to fix that problem. It's way beyond consumers. I mean, even I know a lot about trash and a lot about recycling, and I often will have an object and I'm thinking, can this be recycled or not? And I know all about it.
Yeah.
And I know what websites to look at, and things aren't clear. So the first thing is we have to, and consumers did not request disposable packaging. It just happened.
Oh, you're right.
We don't have to wait. Businesses and manufacturers don't have to wait for consumers to request something different, to offer something different. And so I think we need to start thinking outside the box, figuring out a different way. I don't know if it's reusable packaging that gets recycled, or if that's too labor intensive, or I don't know what the answer is. But I know that we all have to start thinking about ways to I like to say, turn off the tap. If your bathtub is overflowing or your sink is overflowing, you're kind of an idiot if you start mopping without turning off the water.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're doing with this whole trash crisis. We haven't turned off the tap, but we're trying to clean it up. And it's, it's like sweeping back the sea. It's not going to work. We have to find a way to produce less stuff, less trash, less packaging for sure, and maybe less stuff. I'm a big proponent of redesigning things so that they can be disassembled and all parts can be reused when they reach the end of their useful life cycle.
Yeah.
It's a cradle-to-cradle concept, and there's a book by that title. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend it for everybody. And also for a new concept, new to me anyway when I learned it, is the concept of products of service. And that means instead of everybody buying, I don't know, a dishwasher, I like to use a dishwasher. How about if I lease the dishwasher? When I buy a dishwasher, I find it needs to be replaced about every 4 years because the motherboard breaks or whatever, and get a new motherboard costs almost the same as a whole new dishwasher, so I might as well get a whole new dishwasher. Well, I'd rather lease that dishwasher, and if I did, I bet whoever leased it to me would manufacture it differently because they'd be responsible for repairing it every time it broke. They'd be responsible for disposing of it when I'm done with it. And so why couldn't we start, and that would change business models for sure. But you know what, in the next decade or two, there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable things that come down, and I think if we go out to meet those uncomfortable things and find ways to adjust how we do business, we'll have less pain than if we refuse to change and insist on trying to do things the way we always did them. It's not going to work. It's just not going to work. Supply chains aren't going to support it. Consumers aren't going to support it. We just need to find some creative ways to make some changes.
That's a really wonderful creative way to make some changes.
And if now you've got me on a roll,
Yeah.
another product of a service could be carpets. Carpets could be made differently so that they're recyclable, reusable, so on and so forth. Rather than everybody owning carpets, we could lease them, or in apartments in particular, they could be leased and they can be changed out when the next people come, and the people who own the carpets can do whatever they're going to do with them, clean them up, reuse them, whatever. Anyway, that's
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about furnishings. Of course, furnishings would be an easy one,
Yep.
but the carpet certainly could be if the room size, or if they're modules that you just click in.
Yeah,
I guess that
yeah.
would be really great.
Right.
What are some zero waste initiatives that are already in place right now in Fairfield?
Well, let's see. Not necessarily in Fairfield, but the whole bottle recycling is an issue that it worked really well, and I'm not completely clear why it is that we seem to be moving away from it. I'd like to see us do it more. I'd like to see more bottle bill eligible things and more recycling of bottles. I'd like to see a lot of return to glass bottles.
Yeah.
We can all, maybe you can't remember, but I can remember, back in the day, milkmen delivered bottled milk and took away the old bottles. I don't know if that's something we need to go back to or not, but I do know that we have to find ways to reduce how much plastic we're using. I'm not for getting rid of all plastic. I would hate to go to a hospital if there was no plastic in it.
Yeah.
But we don't need everything to be plastic. We could paper drinking straws work just as well as plastic ones, and there are a lot of places where we could be using less plastic.
For sure.
Yeah. Zero waste initiatives locally. Well, recently when we had our Earth Day event, we tried to make that as zero waste as possible, so that all the vendors were using either compostable or reusable food containers. I just went to a conference that was completely zero waste, and all the food was served on washable things. There were no handouts.
Yeah.
They were all on a phone app.
Yeah.
And I think that's the wave of the future.
For sure. Yeah. And then also you had a creative waste reuse activity also at the
Yes, we did.
event.
Yes, we did. We had our eco fashion show,
Yeah.
which we charged our participants to make some clothing out of found materials or recycled materials, and it was a ton of fun. And I don't expect them to be walking down the street wearing those things, but it was fun, and it just kind of highlights the whole idea of the crazy amount of waste that we have.
Yeah. Also, we have a new. I don't know how long Hazel and Gray has been open.
We do. We have Hazel and Gray, which is on the square, on the west side of the square, and in Hazel and Gray's in that shop, she sells sustainable materials, things that are made out of wood and bristle brushes, and you can take containers in there and get refilled dish soap or laundry soap, stuff like that. Yep, and
Nice.
sells bamboo and recycled toilet paper, and a lot of things that are built to last. instead of built for planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
Which is that's another pet peeve of mine that I could go
I'm
on
going to
and
have
on
you
about.
back to talk
Yeah,
about that one.
right.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just been so nice to get to know you a little bit deeper. I get the pleasure of spending time with Anne on a regular basis.
This is Marg, though.
With Marg. I get the pleasure of spending time with Marg on a regular basis, and I really appreciate the efforts that she puts into keeping our community kind of oriented towards progressive movement around so many efforts, waste management being one of them, and zero waste orientation, definitely a big component of the work that Marg is doing. She's an amazing organizer. She's been participating in community events for many years now, and we're just so grateful and lucky to have her. It's been a treat to sit with you right now.
Thank you very much, Faith.
Pardon my my misspeaking.
That's okay.
And I just am so grateful for the energy that you put into the work that we do here with the Resilient Action Committee, and the support that you give me personally. I find myself just truly blessed to get to know you better.
Thank you for those kind words.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.